Hello and welcome back to Sprouted Dreams. I thought this week we would go over taking this very simple potted plant with a little spider plant and a snake plant. And look, I think my snake plant is actually making a little baby here. And we're going to turn this into a little fairy garden. It's going to be kind of hard to show what I'm doing with the angles, but I will show photos at the end so you can kind of get a different perspective as we're building this together. So if you want to make a potted plant like this into a fairy garden, you might think a fairy door is an excellent idea. And they are fine to use, even functional ones, if you make them very, very small like this. A functional door can work as long as the size is appropriate for the pot that you're putting it in. And keep in mind that you want to put it somewhere where perhaps an onlooker might be able to actually open the door, especially if it's one that actually can open. So you can put that there and add some simple little pathway steps and press those into the soil like that. We could even have it come around like under this sort of branch here. And then you can add your fairy. Where is she? I have the fairy that goes with this. Where did she go? Oh dear, there she is. Okay, see now that's having a hard time staying up, so we may need to put a little support back there. But you can put your fairy kind of under the leaves and stuff like this so that you have a nice display with a functional door, as long as it's super small. If you choose a door that is very large, such as this one, if you put a very large door, see how that doesn't work in the proportion to the pot? And also, people are going to be reaching in here trying to open the door all the time. See? And look, your leaves will get damaged. So we don't really want to use a large door. And honestly, I prefer to not use a functional door unless they're outside. So let's move on from that idea and on to a non-functional door. Now again, size needs to be proportional. If you choose a fairy door like this, and if you like how this one's made, look in the show notes. I will link the video on how we made this door, the non-functional one. But this is made to hang, and these are really made for outside on the larger doors. So we want to choose something proportional. This is a little bit bigger, but it still works for this size. And you can put in some little shiny stones, and those could even go all the way around the pot so it looks very magical. And then perhaps you could put in a little fairy somewhere, and she could go up on one of these stones like this, or you could even put her, set this here and put her right there. And that looks just fine. These little pathways don't quite fit in. Maybe we would go with something smaller, or maybe just leave those out. Just like that. And you could actually make that into your sort of fairy display. We could add a little mushroom in there instead and kind of tuck that in the side. So this is in the back. So that might work as well. The other option you have is to take simple figurines and some, again, like mushrooms, but if you put it with, my next idea is a bench. And a bench works really well because you can tuck them in so many different places and change the angle. Now look, this looks up too high because the spider plant kind of spills out this way. So we want kind of a shorter bench like this, and that sits down in there, and then you can put a little sitting fairy just like that, and maybe even a little fairy with a friend. You could fit two of them on there. And that changes your potted plant into a display. Now, if you want to have just tiny pieces and you want to just throw them in there, of course, you could just put in a fairy, add a little friend like this little toad, and then perhaps you could add some mushrooms over here. They're a little bit taller, and a little mushroom like this in front, and then just put some of the little pathway pieces around on the backside. This makes more of a 360-degree view where there's something for someone to look at in sort of every angle. So see, we have the mushroom here, the fairy and the frog over there. Maybe those don't look so good. Let's switch to these. And then we could even put in a tall heart like that, just for something else to kind of look at. I will see if I can take this off here for just a minute. See, so this way it has these little shiny pieces, the heart, you turn it, there's the frog and the fairy, the mushroom, and then here's another mushroom. So this is a 360-degree view, and that's another way that you can set them up so that you have a fairy garden that is visible from all angles. So depending on where your pot is set and how people will look at it, set up your display accordingly, and hopefully you will come up with a display that's just perfect for you and the miniatures that you have. So again, I will put some pictures at the end. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next week. Until then, happy fairy gardening. All right, so remember, tip number 1 is if you choose a functional door, be sure that it's small enough that whoever is looking at the display, they can reach in there and utilize the functionality of the door. The next all has to do with size. So if you have this size door, like this, put a fairy with it that is appropriate to that size door. Many times people will put a door this size and put a fairy this size. Well, my goodness, you know, how is this size fairy going to fit through this door? It's not going to happen. She needs a bigger door. So if you want a bigger door, you can use a bigger fairy then with that appropriate size door. And this works fine for this pot. I wouldn't go huge. Remember, keep the size of your pot in mind and don't put a door this big in this size pot. Similarly, if you have a door that you are putting in and you find that your little pavers, see, are too small, use a larger paver that works more appropriately to that size door. Just keep everything in mind. And if you have a plant that is going to be looked at just this way, you can set up your display in a specific direction. Where did my mushrooms go? So you can set up these mushrooms with this door and then stay there. Stop that. And then you can add a fairy to go with that. However, if you would like to have a circular design, use the process that I showed earlier and make sure that your design has features that are visible all the way around so that your house or your door or your fairies can be viewed in multiple directions. And then you can add a bit of different scale there. So if you want to tuck that smaller fairy in the back, that's totally fine. I hope that those tips get you started. Can't wait to see what you make.